So we've heard many talks today, very, very moving, inspirational talks. In one of those talks, there was a mention about an analogy, and that is the analogy of the bird. And the sheikh mentioned that this bird, in order to fly properly, has to have two wings. And he mentioned that those two wings are sabr and shukr. Inshallah, today, I'm going to talk about the second wing, which is shukr. But in this talk, I want to approach it from a different perspective. I want to go to an ayah in the Quran in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about an announcement that has been made. And this announcement was made by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and said by Musa alayhi salam. But before I tell you what that announcement is, I want to give you some context. And I think that this context will be even more timely now. Musa alayhi salam is speaking to a people whose children have been massacred. He is speaking to a people who are dealing with a pharaoh who has made it a policy to murder baby boys. And he is speaking to that group of people, Bani Israel, when he makes this proclamation. Now, keeping that in mind, I want you to listen carefully to what he proclaims from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the proclamation of Allah. And I want you to remember who is being spoken to. These are people who are being traumatized. These are people who are being slaughtered. These are people who are in it. These are not people who are having an easy life. These are people who've been enslaved and their children murdered. And I think we can understand a little bit about what that might look like because of what we're dealing with now and what we're witnessing now in Gaza. And what does he say in this proclamation? وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. Now this is very interesting because this proclamation is وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ, the first part. And if your Lord proclaims, so Allah is proclaiming. And understand that there is a lot of grammar here which puts emphasis upon emphasis about what is being told, what is being said. I can say something to you, but that's different than me proclaiming something. Now, what is the proclamation? وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. That's the proclamation. That if you are grateful, and this is a conditional statement, right? There's an if statement here. If then, if you are grateful, and now there is another emphasis with the lam, la azidannakum. If you are grateful, then surely, for sure, I will increase you. And that is the statement. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remember who is he speaking to? Now you would think that if you're speaking to a people who are being slaughtered, who are being oppressed, who are being enslaved, that your message would be a message of patience. You would think that you would be reminding these people to have sabr, right? That you would be reminding them to persevere. And yet, the proclamation is about gratitude. It isn't even about sabr. And now this is very profound, and I'll get to why. But the proclamation is a divine principle, and that is, if you are grateful, Allah will increase you. Now, if you study psychology, and I'll talk about psychology for a second. If you study psychology, especially modern positive psychology, there is a big emphasis now on well-being and the study of happiness. And they've moved away from abnormal psychology, figuring out how the human being can break down and figuring out how to fix it. And now there's a lot more emphasis on increasing well-being and happiness. And what they found is very fascinating when you look at all these studies. What they find is that everyone wants to be happy. And yet, they found that people pretty much live on this sort of baseline happiness. It's a set point. And that when really exciting things happen in your life, you have a peak, but you pretty much go back to baseline. And similarly, when something difficult happens in your life, you have this, this low, but you pretty much come back to baseline. And this baseline is not so easy to change. But they found that there are two reliable ways to increase the baseline. And what are those two reliable ways? Number one, service to others. That in the service of others, you can actually increase your own baseline happiness. Something that you can't do by winning the lottery. Something that you can't do by getting a promotion. Those are temporary spikes. But service